Our next inductee, Chuck Papalia, class of 1953. He was a terrific lineman at Watertown High School. And as all too often happens, the linemen get lost in the shuffle. He could well have been inducted into this Hall of Fame 20 years ago. An all-scholastic football player in the offensive line and defensive line. A terrific defenseman in hockey. A starting football player for 3 years at Harvard University and all Eastern football. A terrific football player for Harvard and unusual for the time, able to play 2 sports at Harvard. Also a defenseman in hockey as well for the Harvard hockey team. As I mentioned previously, one of the top linemen in the history of Watertown High School, should have been in this Hall of Fame 20 years ago, but he's in tonight. Chuck Papalia, class of 1953. Good, please stand. Please stand. Chuck will be receiving the award from his teammate Bob Capridin.
Before I take a trip down nostalgia lane, I'm going to take this opportunity to thank the committee for this selection, thank my teammates and coaches. Every coach I had in 3 sports is in the Hall of Fame. Many of my teammates are in the Hall of Fame. And I want to congratulate my classmates who are in the Hall of Fame this year too, the track team, co-captains John Carnegian and co-captain Joe Maria, who led the track team to a state championship. My career at Watertown High actually began 1 year earlier when I was a 9th grader at the East Junior High School. Babe Samorian, Freddie Alberico, and I were called into Coach Carl Clem's office and told that Joe Murphy, the coach of the varsity hockey team, heard that we were pretty good skaters and wanted us to participate in a game Friday night at the arena against Framingham, a Bay State League game. And he was going to give us uniforms and we were going to skate with the team. We were 9th graders at the East Junior. We didn't even attend the high school. But that night I went home with my uniform, and it was a red hockey jersey and had Watertown in black lettering across the chest. And I wore it as I ate dinner with my family. And then at 9 o'clock when it was time to go to bed, my mother came over and said, Chuck, you gotta, get it, it's the school night. You gotta get your pajamas on and get to bed. And I said, I think I'm gonna sleep with this jersey on. It has Watertown written across in black letters across the red jersey. And I'll never forget that. That was many years ago, and it seems like it was yesterday. The next memory that I'd like to talk about was the first extra point I kicked as a 14-year-old sophomore against Newton. Joe Zeno would call my house in the morning and said, why don't you come up and we're going to play Newton and we think we can score some points, and if we do, we'll put you in for an extra point. And they did. The 3rd touchdown scored against Newton. He says, go in and kick the extra point. I went into the huddle, and who was I greeted by? The long snapper, Johnny Valakis, Hall of Famer. Jimmy Lopez, the quarterback, the holder, Hall of Famer. Unfortunately, he went to the wrong college. He went down in New Haven to Yale. But 3 other guys on the front line, Paul Stadpole at end, Gene Renzi at tackle, and Larry Caffarello, the other tackle. Anyway, the snap was good, the hold was good, and I managed to get the ball over the over the crossbar between the uprights. And that was the first point I ever scored. Then at the end of the year against Belmont, my senior year, we were playing a team that was really weak. Belmont had a perfect record. They had lost every game they played coming into Thanksgiving. So we didn't have much of a competition, and we scored 7 touchdowns. and each of the touchdowns was scored by a different player. So we had 7 touchdown makers, and Freddie Alberico, in addition to a touchdown, also got an extra point. So he was the only multiple scorer, and he got the trophy for being the most valuable player in the Belmont game. Freddie's here tonight. Well, after the 7th touchdown, I went in and I kicked the extra point, and I became the 8th player to score in that game, which was unusual, 8 players to score in one game. And then fast forwarded to my senior year at Harvard, we were playing Yale, and let me go back a step. Our senior year, we won the championship, we won the Class B championship, but we had a blemish on our record. We lost to Brookline, and that loss prevented us from going down to the Orange Bowl to play Edison High of Miami. The Orange Bowl committee said that they were interested in us, but we had to be undefeated. And when we lost that game to Brookline, we lost our chance to go to the bowl game. And they picked a high school from New Jersey. Brookline beat us, and then years later, playing for the Harvard football team against Yale, who happens to be the captain of Yale, Paul Lynch, a Brookline football player, who comes into Harvard Stadium with high hopes. They had beaten Princeton. We had lost to Princeton in a tight game, 16-14. And so if they beat us, they win the Big Three title. If we beat them, then we end up in a 3-way tie, Princeton, Harvard, and Yale. And 3 of my teammates who were on that team and helped Harvard and a guard from Watertown beat Yale, a team that was captained by Paul Lynch, a Brookline guy, are here tonight. And I'd like to recognize each one of those 3 teammates by the number they wore in that game. And if we could have the lights, I'd like you guys to see these 3 gentlemen. They were teammates. Number 81, Paul Kirk, and then number 84, Han Cohane, and then number 12, Albie Cullen, halfback, who in this game, by the way, scored a 2-point conversion and a touchdown, and we beat Yale 28-0. And Harvard got a little Harvard and Watertown got a little bit of payback by knocking off Yale, a team that was captained by a Brookline guard. But in closing, I want to thank, again, my teammates, the inductees this year, and I'd like to say 2 words to the committee. Thank you.
What happens when you get older? You forgot your plaque. Harvard or not? Bet your Boston State guys don't forget their plaques. That's mean. I want you to get the routine down so I don't get yelled at by Capridian, because I forget. When we introduce somebody, please stand and applaud, because every year I forget to tell them, and Bob yells at me to remind everybody to do that. So now it's on you. If you don't stand, it's your fault.